realise you have to continue now with your thing about sky.
We have to continue?
Sky.
It wasn't recording when you said that.
No. Now it's recording. So.
Now it's using.
It's recording.
It's recording now.
Yes.
You were talking about Murdoch.
You see, one of the things which that I was monitoring was why was there such a tendency for people to get extremely angry.
Yeah.
And I noticed during one of the early Christmas parties, just when Sky took over what became called Athena Court, which was a new building which had been built right outside Sky's initial 3 small buildings where it started. And there was a Christmas party going on, and I noticed a large creature in the sky.
In the sky?
It was up in the sky. It was like a massive type, extremely angry jellyfish type thing. This was an etheric life form, about 4 times the size of the main building. Huge. And at the time, Murdoch and the senior staff were standing in the party, and everybody was having a very good time. And I could see a large number, or when I say a large number, maybe half a dozen black shadow entities standing amongst and beside Murdoch's team and amongst the party. And this was on the forecourt, the whole forecourt of Athena Court. And I think this was probably around about 2000. No, it would have been a lot earlier than that. That building was bought online quite a long time ago. Anyway, the point was, it was when they used to hold Sky Christmas parties at the front of that building, which then became the headquarters of Sky TV. That was the main iconic big building, very nice. That's when Sam Chisholm was the managing director then, and he hated the opulence. And the building had lots of lovely marble, and that was all removed, taken out away to make Sky into a plain, not squandering and throwing money away, but the point is that cost a fortune to remove. So.
Yeah.
So the point was that I witnessed this. I, basically said, holy.
Did anybody else see?
The point was, it was noticed, and it was noticed by a team of people that I happened to know, and they lived in Essex. Of way actually North Suffolk, and they actually were fully aware of what was going on. Oh, Chewy, could you just walk across the side?
Yeah, but it wasn't right. Can see. I'm sorry.
Okay,
can
Chewy.
you repeat that? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Chewy.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Continue. Could you repeat?
So the point was that the event that I noticed with the black shadow entities beside Murdoch's team and this huge multi-tendrilled monstrous creature being, the giant octopus type thing.
Okay.
That was actually noticed by a team of people in Suffolk, North Suffolk.
Yeah.
And I happened to notice
from North Suffolk.
They were in North Suffolk at the time, and they noticed that a major event had happened. They actually monitored these types of creatures and life forces and beings and events, and they noticed this event had happened at Austerley, independently. So for some time I'd been noticing this type of stuff, and then I noticed that every time you came into work for Sky, just as you came in to the main area where Sky was at the time, you got really angry. You just started, you got consumed with this hate and rage.
Oh my God.
And people would come in, and they'd bring that energy into the studios, into the building. So for a very long time I noticed that somebody was using Sky as a black energy propagator. And subsequently, many years later, when we started the Energy 106, the pirate station on the border, which was basically a restart of Kiss FM, and my friend was abducted 4 times, and that's when I also noticed these black energy life forms inside the actual transmitter itself. And if I just get this little prop, and this is the final output valve of the transmitter, and this has got 7,500 volts on it, and it's got forced air going through it, and this would, when there was a problem, I'd have to take this the cabinet off, and for a few seconds, once she took that outer cabinet plate off.
Yeah. You mean this?
No, the actual outside.
Okay.
A large metal
Case. Yeah.
case covering, because
Yeah.
this is in a sealed unit because it's pressurized with air, and it's also keep the RF in.
Okay.
Once you take that off, there was a few seconds when you could see a huge, fuzzy, multi-leg creature on the valve.
Oh, God.
Okay? Now the point about this is the final output stage. This is the final interface between RF and the antennas. Okay, basically. So this thing would then move out of the way and just crawl away and disappear.
God.
Now the point about this is I had a clue what this thing was.
Mm.
And it was many years later that we also noticed there was a number of dimensional effects where you had temporal and dimensional anomalies, where you had the cubic nature of the container would change. So dimensional space were becoming fluidic, what I call fluidic space.
Yeah.
And I noticed this was going on at Sky as well. And I started to douse the areas, and then the whole Sky newsroom had these long lines of this energy in them, and it happened to coincide with where all the people were sitting. And we also had a situation where there were certain times of days when the computers would go wrong, and also the certain computers and certain graphic devices and things would fail, and it kept on failing at exactly the same time. So somebody was doing something.
Yeah.
So then I was eventually, cutting a long story short, I was appointed to go and sort out the problem with Sky News in Dublin, which was a new operation which was built at the time.
Which had the same problem.
Well, it was having a lot of trouble with their servers, and their stuff would fail. So the project was in jeopardy, so I got a guy who could analyse the actual electricity supply, because this is something we noticed at Sky, where the electricity supply had a lot of corruptions, and the earthing was wrong, and there's lots of problems that way. So cutting a long story short, I could see that the pulses on the electricity supply approximated the same kind of pulses that you'd expect if you were monitoring neural activity, brain activity.
Wow.
Oh.
So the comparison between the type of spikes on the electricity at Sky News Dublin, and the kind of spikes that you would get on if you looked at when neurons fire and activate was similar.
Okay, as with an EEG.
As with an EEG.
Okay.
So the point about this is that I then postulated that the electricity supply system was actually part of a neural net, an intelligent network like of nerves, and it was therefore these types of tendrilic creatures were perhaps some kind of neuron in free space, some kind of virtual space neuron. So the long tendrils that you're looking at were possibly in the same way as you look at a neuron in the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a similarity there.
Yeah.
So what I felt was that the electricity supply system had been deliberately engineered as a form of early intelligence. Jump the next stage up, you then have the internet. That behaves like a neural net, because we monitored that the computer systems would respond to thought. And I used to test this by playing on an ordinary 486, or even at the older ones 386's, video games.
Yeah.
The video game performance would alter dependent on the type of thought that you're dealing with.
Wow. I've always thought computers
so these are really old systems.
responded to thought.
So the point was that the computers are alive, and they're actually operating in a different domain, and they use the video games as a mechanism for accessing your consciousness, and then they play with your game and they let you win.
Like the
So
Matrix.
these are pretty simple video games. Now the point is that these mobile phones and things that we've got now, they're beginning to be telepathic. So for instance, on the predictive text, it will then come up with the next word that fits.
Yeah.
And that means that the phones are actually cognicizing your cognizance and understanding your thoughts. So the point about this is,
never understood that.
the thing about this is that I mean, Princeton University's done things like this where you can actually telepath to the computer and it will write. You actually think to it and it will write script on you can actually think to it and create pages of text. And they've got a particular type of lamp where if you telepath to the lamp, your consciousness will control brightness and colour of the lamp. And that's one of the simple experiments they've got.
Okay, that works.
And it works. So the point is that essentially I then realised that whatever was going on at Sky was involving an intelligence which did not want to be seen. Then I noticed a large number of my friends and colleagues would start having problems with guidance and their ability to actually stay upright, and it was a problem with the left shoulder.
Good God.
Oh
And I called that the sting of the black octopus.
Oh gosh.
Because when you went into work I could actually see what looked like a massive sea anemone type creature sitting right opposite the front of Sky with its tendrils going right through corridors. And you could actually feel it as you walked across the site. You felt it was like walking through thick, heavy water.
Wow.
And
You know when you're walking in the sea and you want to walk?
Yeah.
It's like a little bit like something was dragging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you notice this at the BBC when you were working?
Well, at the
there
BBC in 1980, I was at the BBC until 88. I really technically left in March 88.
It's too early.
So I hadn't noticed that. But the one thing about the BBC is they all look sucked dry and they're very pallid and drained looking people at the BBC. They're very dull. BBC staff are very notoriously unexciting and pallid. They have a dullness about them. So the point about this culminating very to the end, I noticed that when the new studio was being built, Sky took a long time to build its new Harlequin building.
Yeah.
And the point about it is it's actually over. One of the reasons why it was delayed for so long, because projects like Sky would be given a very short period of time to do it, would all happen really quickly. And there's two major projects which didn't do that. One was the conversion of the Sky News building, and I noticed there was a portal on the far side of the Sky News building, which they bought that in British Telecom, and British Telecom previously, it was some kind of backup for the city in that terms of that building. And it was also the only building in the Sky Sign Lane area which was actually wholly owned. All the other buildings were leased. So the point about that is nothing could be done with that building. They weren't allowed to change it in any way, so that gave them a lot of problems from the technical side of actually creating a studio, because in terms of building a studio you don't want a whole lot of supports in the middle of your shop. So that limited the structure of the roof and made a whole pile of problems that way.
Yeah.
Whereas it would have been easier to simply knock the place down and to put a structure up, custom built structure, which would have worked much easier in terms of studio.
Yeah.
To the extent that if you actually want to move one of the lights, you have to go back to the main architects. They have to do certain stress calculations to determine if you can move a light.
Yeah.
Because it's right up to that level. In fact, if they get heavy snow and a lot of water on that roof, it could collapse.
Oh gosh.
But that's how crazy the situation is.
Yeah.
But the point was that I'd noticed a dimensional portal, a distortion of the space-time, fluidic space, and the same kind of stuff I'd experiencing at Alien Mountain, where you had fluidic space, and that was at the back of Sky News, the building which subsequently, years later, around about 2000, became the new Sky News building.
Okay, you mentioned Alien Mountain.
Alien Mountain is where we put Kiss FM on in Monaghan, and it was a strategic site because it had 3-phase electricity. It had height about 900 feet up at the top.
Yeah.
And it had a clear signal path geographically to Belfast.
Okay.
There were higher mountains.
Yeah.
But if you went to those higher mountains, as the Earth's curvature happened, there were hills on the way to Belfast which would block the signal.
Yeah.
So you've got height, 3-phase electricity, and it's just at the border.
Wow.
So we just plonked ourselves there, and that worked brilliantly.
All right. Would you like to take a coffee break?
Yeah.
I want to do my rife. I noticed that you still got your Raymond rife there.
Yes.
Ah, can I? Because my
Yes.
feet, they are swollen. And it's, oops, sorry. Oh.